I'd just gotten off work around 10:45 p.m. one Friday night and was heading back to my place. My apartment was in a small town called Redfield, about 40 minutes away from the city of Hartford where I worked. The drive home was usually something I enjoyed. The roads were quiet, and by the time I got out of the city it felt peaceful, almost calming after a long shift. That night I was about 15 to 20 minutes away from home when I turned onto Maple Hollow Road, a long, narrow two-lane road that cuts straight through miles of forest. I'd been using this route for nearly 5 years and nothing strange had ever happened to me on it before. I will admit, though, it always carried a kind of eerie vibe at night. The road was poorly lit, surrounded on both sides by dense trees, and in the fall months it often filled with heavy fog that made it impossible to see more than a few yards ahead. Still, it was always empty that late at night. No turns, no intersections, just one straight shot to town. So I never really thought much of it. A couple minutes down Maple Hollow, I noticed through the fog a faint blinking light. I couldn't tell how far it was or what side of the road it was on. I slowed down, squinting ahead, and just as I got closer, the light suddenly disappeared. By then, I was going maybe 15 to 20 miles per hour when, out of nowhere, an old beat-up sedan rolled out of the trees and stopped dead in front of me. I slammed on the brakes, but I was already too close. My bumper lightly tapped the back of theirs. The impact wasn't serious at all, but the whole thing shocked me. I pulled over a little, got out, and stood beside my car waiting for the other driver to do the same. Inside the sedan, I could see shadows shifting around in the front seat, but for some reason they weren't getting out right away. After a few seconds, the driver's side door opened and a tall, heavy-set man stepped out. He looked to be in his late 40s, maybe early 50s. His movements were slow, deliberate, and he never once made eye contact with me. He just kept glancing around at the road, at the trees, like he was checking if anyone else was there. I started off politely, saying something like, "Everything okay? You kind of pulled out pretty quick." After a long pause, he muttered, "Yeah, sorry." The way he said it, the way he acted, put me on edge immediately. I told him I didn't see much damage to either car, and that I was just going to head home. I turned toward my door, but then he quickly said, "Wait, let me check my car first." He walked to the back bumper, crouched a little, then strangely began circling the entire car like he was looking for damage everywhere, which didn't make sense. I had only tapped the rear bumper. As he made his way toward the passenger side, I noticed movement in the back seat. A large figure sat up suddenly and started reaching for the door handle. That's when alarm bells went off in my head. I bolted back into my car, slammed the door shut, and locked it just as a second man climbed out of the back seat. Both of them began waving their arms, signaling for me to roll down my window or stop. I ignored them, shoved the car in drive, and swerved around their sedan, flooring it down the road. My heart was pounding out of my chest. In the rearview mirror, through the mist, I saw their headlights flick on. The glow followed me for maybe 30 seconds before fading out completely. I didn't risk going straight home. Instead, I pulled into a brightly lit Shell gas station about 5 minutes away and waited in the lot, keeping an eye on the road to see if they would pass by. 15 minutes later, their car never showed. Eventually, I made it home, but I couldn't shake how wrong the whole situation felt. I never called the cops because I kept second-guessing myself. Maybe I was overreacting. But the more I thought about it, the more convinced I became that they were trying to lure me into something bad. If I hadn't trusted my gut and driven away, I honestly don't know what could have happened. And what chills me the most is the thought that maybe, when they lost sight of me, they went looking for someone else instead. Back in 2016, I was working for a mid-sized hauling company based out of Toledo, Ohio. Most of our jobs involved moving frozen goods across a few Midwestern states. Usually my shifts were simple, 3 or 4 deliveries in a day, then straight back to the warehouse before heading home. But every now and then we had long-distance routes that forced us to stay overnight on the road. That particular week I was scheduled for one of those long hauls, delivering to several stores out in Kentucky. I left early in the morning, dropped off the load, and by the time I was heading back it was already past 1 a.m. I knew there was no way I was making it home that night, so I planned to stop at a rest area, sleep a couple of hours in the cab, then finish the drive in the morning. I remember seeing a sign for a truck stop about 35 miles up the highway, so I settled in and kept going. Driving late at night on those empty interstates has always made me zone out. The road is long, straight, and quiet. At one point, I noticed something flicker in my driver's side mirror, a sudden flash of headlights way too close to my trailer. I couldn't see the vehicle itself, which usually meant it was tailgating so close it had slipped into my blind spot. I figured the driver would switch lanes and pass me, but he didn't. He just stuck behind me, almost glued to my bumper, mile after mile. I tried not to let it get under my skin, but it was making me nervous. If I had to hit the brakes for any reason, this guy would have smashed right into me. Thankfully, the truck stop was only a few miles away. As I pulled into the exit, I checked my mirrors. The car slowed slightly, but then followed me right into the lot. That's when I started to feel uneasy. I thought maybe I'd cut him off earlier without realizing, and he was going to yell at me. In my years of trucking, I'd had more than my share of angry drivers, but never anyone follow me like this. I parked in one of the open spots, shifted into neutral, and watched. The car rolled slowly toward me until it stopped directly behind my trailer, too close for me to even see the front of it. By this point, my nerves were on edge. I decided to confront him. I climbed down from the cab, slammed the door shut, and started to walk toward the back. But as soon as I moved, the car suddenly reversed and sped off across the lot like it was running from something. I caught a glimpse as it passed under a light, an old white sedan, rusty all over with push bars on the front like those on decommissioned police cars. I stood there for a minute scanning the lot. Everything looked empty. After checking my trailer doors and locks, I convinced myself maybe it was nothing and went back inside the cab. I made sure every door was locked tight, switched off the engine, and tried to get some rest. Sometime later, I was jolted awake by a loud bang against the trailer. I checked my watch. It was a little past 3:15 a.m. Before I could even process what I'd heard, there came another bang, louder this time, echoing through the trailer walls. I sat frozen for a second, then cautiously peeked into the side mirror. That's when I saw a faint shadow moving at the back of the truck. My stomach dropped. I grabbed the small utility knife I always kept in the middle console and carefully slipped out of the cab, leaving the driver's door cracked open so it wouldn't make a sound. As I crouched low and made my way toward the rear, I peeked under the trailer. There was someone standing right against the back doors. Behind him, parked with its lights completely off, was the same white sedan I'd seen earlier. The second I realized what was happening, panic shot through me. Instead of getting any closer, I shouted at the man as loud as I could. My voice shook, but it was enough. The figure bolted into the car and sped off into the night. When I checked the back of the trailer, I saw fresh scratch marks all over the lock. They'd been trying to cut it open. My hands were trembling as I traced the grooves in the metal. They were deep enough to prove whoever it was had been working at it for a while. I looked around for other truckers, anyone who might have witnessed it, but the lot was practically deserted. After pacing for a few minutes, I climbed back in the cab, locked everything again, and decided to just keep driving. I wasn't about to risk another incident. The rest of the ride back to Ohio was uneventful. Still, even years later, that night sticks with me. I keep thinking about how close that stranger came to getting inside. I know he thought the trailer was full of food, but it had been completely empty. To this day, every time I stop at a rest area in the dark, I can't help but glance over my mirrors, wondering if someone is lurking just out of sight, waiting for the right moment. In the summer of 2022, my friends and I went to a big outdoor music festival on the east side of Detroit, Michigan. The tickets were cheap, the lineup was great, and since we were going as a group, I didn't really worry about safety, even though the area was known for being rough. The concert itself was amazing. We stayed until the very last set and didn't leave the venue until around 10:30 p.m. By then, the parking lot was jam-packed with people trying to get out at the same time, and traffic on the main road was crawling at a snail's pace. After sitting in the same spot for nearly half an hour, one of my friends pulled out their phone and found an alternate route through the side streets. It looked like it would save us at least 20 minutes, so we all agreed to try it. At first, it seemed like a good idea. We turned off the main road and started weaving through narrow neighborhood streets. But right away, it felt off. Unlike the quiet suburbs we were used to back home, these blocks were full of people standing on porches, sidewalks, and even in the middle of the street. And every time we passed by, they stared at us. Another thing we noticed, we hadn't seen a single other car for more than 15 minutes. That realization hit all of us at once, and the car got quiet. I asked the friend in the passenger seat to check the GPS again and see how far we were from the highway. Just then, my other friend pointed ahead. At the very end of the road we were on, A dark-colored SUV was parked sideways, blocking both lanes completely. I stopped immediately and threw the car into reverse, backing onto the last street we had been on. We turned down another block, hoping to bypass it, but less than a minute later, there it was again. Another vehicle parked sideways, blocking the road. This time I hit the brakes and froze. We couldn't tell if anyone was inside the SUV. The windows were tinted and the streetlights were dim. While we debated whether to drive forward or turn back, two men suddenly emerged from a yard nearby. One of them walked casually to the back of the SUV while the other came straight to my driver's side window. He gestured for me to roll it down. Against my better judgment, I cracked it open just an inch or two. He leaned down, scanned the inside of the car, looked at each of my friends, then asked in a flat voice, "Where you all headed?" Trying to sound calm, I said, "Just trying to get back to the freeway." He nodded slowly, then glanced at his buddy, who had started moving toward the passenger side. For a moment, the street went completely silent. Then, without warning, both men lunged at the car, yanking at the door handles and trying to rip them open. We all screamed. I slammed the gear into reverse and floored it. As I backed up, the man at my window shoved his arm through the small gap, his hand brushing my shoulder before he got stuck for a second. When the car jerked backward, he was pulled free and slammed onto the pavement. I spun the wheel, gunned it down the street, and didn't stop until we were back on the main road we had started on earlier. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel and my friends were in total shock, some of them crying. We decided it was safer to sit in traffic with hundreds of other cars than risk another detour. Eventually we made it back onto the freeway and none of us spoke much until we were miles away from that neighborhood. To this day, I don't know what those men wanted, but I can't shake the thought that if our doors hadn't been locked, things would have ended very differently.